Hello there, and we're going to have a look at today's archetype in our Back to Basics series. So I'm just mix up the box. Open up. What do we have for today? And today is Air and Fire, which is the Magician. So that's the archetype that we'll be looking at today. Okay, so today's archetype is Air and Fire, which is the Magician. So this is one of what we call the cardinal archetypes, and it's the cardinal of air, basically. It's not just air, it's air and fire. Air is its predominant element, fire you could think of as its inner element. But it tends to sort of like almost stand in for the element of air in ways which we can understand in human terms, in a way. It having fire on the inside, I think it sort of like shows you that this archetype is very concerned with novelty and exploration. Yeah, it is an exploratory archetype. It's one which has a very penetrating intelligence, and it has almost like what you might call a sort of flashlight consciousness. It zooms in on detail and it analyzes detail, and it focuses on things, and it penetrates things to try and resolve them, find the answers to things. Yeah, at its best it can open up space, insight, understanding, which is tremendous stuff. You know, this is part of what you really need in life, is to be able to find this and to be able to do this. You know, you can see it cropping up in all sorts of places in mythology and fairy tales. You know, it is the wizard. You know, it's the wizard again in its good form. It's the wizard that can transform one thing into another, that can open hidden doorways, that can find ways through things. And it's very much a light bringer. Concerned with light, it brings light. It's the faculty that brings light to things, the light of certain kinds of awareness, insight, seeing the solutions to things, seeing the quickest, most simple solutions to things. And it has this capacity to kind of cut through things as well, go straight to the answer in that way. So in that way, it's that kind of intuition, if you see what I mean. Rather than the watery feeling kind of intuition, it's that direct insight that sees straight to the answer of something. Now, of course, it's as with any of the archetypes in any of the elemental consciousnesses, it can have problems when it gets blocked, or it runs into its negative manifestations. In the case of this, it's, for instance, like that tendency to blindly follow what somebody thinks is progress, simply for the sake of it being new. Yeah. And no matter what the effects are on life. So, for instance, it's the sort of consciousness that it gets obsessed with gadgets, you know, and wants to turn us, in a sense, into partial robots, or into kind of like a sort of artificial intelligence. Yeah, without any thought of what that would do to our beings as a whole. You know, similarly, it's the sort of thing which will, if it's misused, this consciousness can be applied to, for instance, make a certain effect, say in terms of industry or agriculture, such as being able to produce the biggest fruit, or the most load, or the least resistance to disease. It introduces these sorts of things without any thought of the toxic consequences of these things, you know, and so we have these sorts of problems with this consciousness as well, you know. In a way, this is the sort of consciousness. No, it's not. I was going to say it's the sort of consciousness that says follow the science, you know. But the thing is, it's not so much that actually. It's the consciousness that really just doesn't care about consequences. It just wants to find the answers to the specific questions it's looking at and the specific challenges it's dealing with. You know, So that's one of the things with this kind of consciousness. It's not a holistic consciousness. It's tremendously useful. It gives us so many breakthroughs. Yeah, obviously it's very important in terms of science, but also in terms of certain kinds of art as well, and other areas. But it's not a holistic consciousness. Its blind spot is common sense earthly reality and the holistic reality of living as organisms within this interdependent world. That is one of its blind spots. However, it is a very necessary consciousness. You need it in order to really go anywhere, to reach clarity, to have space, to find answers to things, to reach insight on problems. And so it's immensely important. It's important in healing, it's important in how we deal with life, but it is it's got that linear quality to it, yeah. And so we tend to associate it with sunlight, with light, with the daytime. It's bright, it's curious, it wants to know all the answers, and it will turn over more and more stones to find more and more answers, and it will seek the one big answer to everything, in a sense, yeah. It's one of its qualities, yeah. And it can be blinded by its drive to find answers and to uncover everything and to dissect everything. And again, one of the shortcomings is that in its dissection it kills the thing that it's objectifying, and so that's another problem with the magician. However, to focus on its positive qualities, it does have real positive qualities, and very necessary qualities. Like I said, it brings light, it brings solutions to problems, it brings insight, and if these qualities are used properly, they're absolutely invaluable, and we absolutely need them to be able to work out how to live properly. So, tremendously important archetype. One which we do see in the world a great deal. It's certainly a very fashionable archetype in a sense, though we unfortunately tend to see its negative manifestations rather than its positive ones. And its positive ones are really quite fine, and they can be applied anywhere, including to the inner world, including to looking into things like alchemy, different sorts of areas of knowledge, because any area of knowledge is potentially something that it could dive into and investigate. So, yeah, very investigative, knowledge focused, insight focused, light and space focused archetype, and one which is invaluable, but which can run away with us, and it's unfortunately quite in the fashion of our time, and has been for considerable time, that it is able to run away with little restriction, and of course that causes problems. So that's the magician, which is our archetype for today. I hope you found that interesting, and I hope it forms a reasonable introduction for you to continue your studies with.